Manchester United lose their first game of the season to Crystal Palace, 3-1 at home to Old Trafford. Absolutely dreadful stuff. Absolutely dreadful. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer outclassed, outmanoeuvred and schooled by Roy Hodgson, the ex-England manager, the sacked England manager, one of the poorer England managers of recent times. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and his Manchester United tactics completely undone. Anyway, we'll get to the match review of this video. Embarrassing. So look, I just want it to be known, I want to blame the board for this. I absolutely want to blame the board. The board definitely have played a part in what this start of the season has come to be, but ultimately, there's no forgiving what we saw on the pitch, which is down to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and the players. Absolutely no forgiving getting outplayed by Crystal Palace at home to Old Trafford. I don't care if they've had a week's rest. I don't care if that was not a penalty. It wasn't a penalty, absolutely not a penalty. The performance was not acceptable for Manchester United. Many of those players need to look at themselves in the mirror because some of them are quite simply overrated. We'll get to that in the player ratings. Marcus Rashford, I'm looking at you, son. Of course, we all know if the board have done what they are supposed to have done, and Gary Neville hit the nail on the head during the Premier League match on Sky Sports, if they'd have done what they were supposed to do, Manchester United would be more prepared for the beginning of the season. Is Ollie fighting with a hand behind his back? Of course, but still not acceptable. Still, the questions around Ollie are about his football knowledge, his acumen, his tactics, his strategy, his gameplay, his game plan. You get it. And sure, when he first came in as an interim. You can forgive the fact that he didn't really get his plan into full fruition. Last year, we did see progression, but ultimately still not enough. We were ultimately saved by Bruno Fernandes, let's face it. We want to start seeing it this season. The players that are in the team today have been there long enough to put this kind of plan, these kind of ideas into reality on the football pitch. Are we seeing it? No. We just saw them get schooled by Crystal Palace. We have far better players than Crystal Palace, yet they ultimately won comfortably. So obviously we went down 1-0 very early on. You could say we got caught cold and we are playing our first game of the season, whereas Crystal Palace are a week into their season. And obviously they have had a bit more time than us during the summer due to the fact we were playing in the Europa League, where we actually played very well, especially against Sevilla despite getting knocked out. But they caught us cold, we were 1-0 down. But what Crystal Palace done, and something you don't really associate with Crystal Palace, is they pressed us very early on. This is something Southampton did to us last year, and it ultimately undid our good run of form. They press us really early on for the first 20 minutes, and they nick a goal, and then they start dropping deep, where we struggle to ultimately break teams down. This is a tactic teams are using against us more often. This is what I thought we'd brought Donny van der Beek for. Why didn't he start? I have no idea. In fact, I do have to question Ollie's starting lineup. Maybe there is some reasons for it in terms of selection due to who was fit, who's been training regularly, who's had the match sharpness and breaks, etc. But Southampton got a quick start and dropped deep, and we had no ideas whatsoever. The passing was awful. Bruno's passing wasn't very good. Pogba's passing wasn't very good. Well, Pogba did some good passes, but, it was inconsistent. But I'll get back to that in the player ratings. As the match went on, we started to get more into the game, but it was a false sense of reality, really, because ultimately they were just dropping deep. They were in control. You don't have to have the ball to be in control of a match. This is a very much a Jose Mourinho thing, where basically let the other team have the ball and just drop back and let them do nothing with it. It's controlling their match in a specific way, not an easy on the eye way, but ultimately they were in control. Manchester United had no ideas to break them down. Daniel James was dreadful in the first half, but he wasn't the only one. Crystal Palace also ended the half while they were catching us on the counter-attack, basically slicing straight through us on the counter-attack. We wanted a reaction in the second half. Did we get one? Absolutely not. No reaction at all in the first 15 minutes. We did bring Greenwood on. He did get himself into some good positions. He should have scored the header he got. But ultimately, the game was drifting. Now, obviously, they got a very controversial penalty. Was it a penalty? Absolutely not. It was a ridiculous penalty. But the thing is, I couldn't actually believe what transpired after it. David De Gea jumped 2 inches off his line and the penalty has to be retaken after quite a good save. De Gea never saves penalties. He actually saves one and it gets to get retaken again, of which they score. It was a joke. It was a farce, an absolute farce. I don't want to take away from the fact that Crystal Palace deserved to win, but ultimately that was a farcical situation. The FA really have to have a look at themselves because that was embarrassing. The referee, it was embarrassing. So yes, we were hard done by. Now, I know Neville was saying on Sky Sports that we deserved to be 2-0 down. Were Crystal Palace completely dominant? No, I don't think they deserve to be 2-0 up. You can argue they deserve to be 1-0 up, but 2-0, they weren't that dominant to that much of an extent. Were they in control of the game? Yes, but that doesn't mean you deserve to be 2-0 up. You can be in control of the game and it still be a fair result if it's a draw. But 2-0 up, the penalty doesn't justify West Ham's style of play. But anyway, we went and got a quick goal from Donny van de Beek. A good debut for him, I guess, because he scored. We saw some nice one-touch passing from him especially. But, you know, Ole then went and made substitutes and changed to a back three. And now, usually I applaud a manager when he goes for the attack, even if it doesn't come off. But ultimately, this came after taking Pogba off for Donny van de Beek when we could have took McTominay off and really gone on the front foot. It made no sense to me at all. So he goes on the front foot and leaves us more exposed than what we would have been with Donny van de Beek and Pogba on the pitch, with better assets in terms of offensive attributes with Pogba and Donny van de Beek on the pitch, by literally taking off one of our defenders, removing Martial from his position and putting a completely ineffective Odi Nagalo on. It made no sense. Once again, a silly move by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You have to question his tactics and his strategy, and the questions will always remain around him because sometimes he looks out of his depth, even against the likes of Roy Hodgson, when it comes to his strategic acumen. Of course, it was moments later that Wilfried Zaha went and made it 3-1, a player that we sold, deeming him not good enough, while we've got other players on our side literally being completely ineffectual. Players like Marcus Rashford, who you've got to say since Project Restart has been abysmal. He's been abysmal. He should be dropped. If we had the players to drop him for, he should be dropped. If the board did their job and provided us with squad depth, he should be dropped. Anyway, on to the player ratings. David De Gea, he was okay today. Some back passing and kicks, but he came off his line. Well, apart from that one scary moment in the first half, he actually came off his line to play as a sweeper keeper, which isn't something you usually attribute to David De Gea, but he did it quite well in general. Obviously, he saved a penalty. It got rescinded to be taken again, and he got close to it, but it was a good penalty, so you can't blame David De Gea for that. He made a great save in the first half, which kept it at 1-0. Didn't really have a chance for any of their goals. He was wrong-footed for the third. I did think it might be De Gea's fault at first, but on watching it again, you know, he did just get wrong-footed, and I don't blame him for that. So 6 out of 10 for De Gea. Fosu Mensah, a surprise start at right-back. I don't know what's up with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, but I thought Fosu Mensah actually did all right. I don't think he had a bad game. He got better when Greenwood came on, simply because Greenwood far leaps and bounds better than Daniel James. But 6 out of 10 for Fosu Mensah. But don't worry, guys. You think I'm being generous with these rankings? It's going to get a lot worse from here. They were probably 2 of our better players. Harry Maguire, there was some good passing in the first half, but his passing in the second half became really sloppy. He started to give the ball away, trying to make things happen. That's not your job, Harry. Just do the simple passes. Give the better players the balls to make the passes. Defensively, I don't think he made too many mistakes. But ultimately, you got to think that this guy's holding this defence together now. Victor Lindelof, I just forgot the rating. A 4 out of 10 for Harry Maguire. Victor Lindelof, poor. Poor for the first goal. Let the opposing player get his cross in. I don't think he was completely at fault for that goal, but, you know, he could have done better. And then for the third goal, pushed off the ball by Wilfried Zaha. I mean, come on. Eric Bailly's on the bench. I think Eric Bailly has to start the next game. He does suit Harry Maguire better than Victor Lindelof does. He gives us that bit of strength and that bit of speed. We could have done with that today because Lindelof was getting exposed. It might not have been so bad if Lindelof was next to Eric Bailly, but Harry Maguire's just better than Lindelof. Anyway, 3 out of 10 for Victor Lindelof today. Luke Shaw, I'm holding him responsible for that first goal. I've seen people accuse Brandon Williams of costing us the Europa League against Sevilla when the player came in at the back post to score that goal. Well, this was the exact same situation. I've seen people say that if Luke Shaw had been playing in that game against Sevilla, Manchester United would have won the Europa League. Well, clearly not, because Luke Shaw literally made the same mistake and he's, 4 or 5 years older than Brandon Williams? Not good enough. Offers not much going forward. even ever commented on his lack of speed at half-time. He's an average player, and it was another poor game from Luke Shaw, and Luke Shaw can't afford to have poor games. If he remains a consistent 7 out of 10, which is ultimately the ceiling for him, in my opinion, you can deal with it, and is he in the left-back position is a problem for later. But right now, not good enough, can't afford to have a game like that, offering nothing defensively, offering nothing offensively. Rubbish. Not good enough for Manchester United as a left-back, 2 out of 10. McTominay, now this is a weird one because I don't think McTominay deserved to start. He definitely didn't deserve to start. I didn't want to see him stop. I don't think he was one of the worst players on the pitch. You don't expect to get the brilliant moments out of McTominay, but he does the workhorse job and wins a lot of loose balls and obviously uses his physicality a lot. And he did that really today. He didn't do a whole lot wrong. I would have preferred to see Fred in there if we did have to play a defensive midfielder, but obviously I wanted to see Donny van der Beek play next to Paul Pogba. But I don't think McTominay did a lot wrong in terms of what his role was. It's just that his role shouldn't have been on the pitch against a team of Crystal Palace's calibre, especially against a team that plays deep. Bonkers, but you have to blame Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for that. Like I said, I want to blame the board, but some of these decisions on that football pitch today are down to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and his coaching staff. Paul Pogba. So sorry, I said 5 out of 10 for McTominay. Paul Pogba, some good passes, obviously, just some brilliant things, and he's so silky, but he gave away so many balls today. So many balls. So did he deserve to come off? Yes. Do you take him off? No, because he's still a player that can change the game. So I don't understand why he came off. But he didn't have a good game. So based on his performance, yes, take him off. But, with Paul Pogba on the pitch at 2-1 down, or even 2-0 down, he's the type of player that can get you back into that game. And obviously we didn't have him on the pitch. So 3 out of 10 for Paul Pogba for me today, but we shouldn't have taken him off. But another dodgy decision by Ole. Bruno Fernandes, completely quiet in the attacking midfield role. He got more into it when he came into the defensive midfield role, but obviously, the game was just getting away from us at that point. But, everybody knows what Bruno Fernandes is about now. The opposing teams know that he is a danger man. He's getting closed down a lot faster. When he gets on the ball, the opposing defence is a lot more alert to what Bruno Fernandes might try and do. And we're seeing what the opposing team is doing. They're very alert when Bruno Fernandes gets it. They know that he's the catalyst to what could happen offensively for us. So that explains why Bruno Fernandes was quiet. And now I do want to see him get further in the box more to help Anthony Martial. And I also want to see Pogba get in the box more. But, we need players in the defensive midfield role that can hold that position on their own without relying on a second defensive midfielder next to them. I'm a big fan of Fred, but if he can't do that role, then he's not the man. If Matic can't do that role, then he's not the man. If McTominay can't do the role, he's not the man. If Van der Beek can't do the role, why did we buy him? Look, Marcus Rashford had a great season last year. He scored 20 plus goals despite being injured for around a third of it, I believe. But, the jury's still out on him. How does he affect games when the game's quiet? Today he did absolutely nothing. He was completely outplayed by a player we sold for not being good enough, Wilfried Zaha. Marcus Rashford did nothing today. Really poor, and he's been poor ever since Project Restart. He hasn't got back into the swing of things. We see little combinations with Anthony Martial now and again, but he needs to do far more. He needs to play on the edge of the defensive line of the opposing team rather than dropping deep looking for that galaxy pass, because he hasn't got it. He needs to stop doing that. But a 3 out of 10 for Bruno Fernandes for me today. More of a quiet game than a bad game, but, just not good enough. But I agree with keeping him on the pitch because he is a player who can make a difference. But that's also why Ole should have kept Pogba on the pitch as opposed to McTominay, because McTominay can't make things happen when you're chasing goals. Anyway, on to Marcus Rashford. But the truth is, since Project Restart, if we'd have had a Jadon Sancho and the board had done their job and got us strength in depth up front, Marcus Rashford should be looking at getting dropped at the moment, because if we've got Sancho on the right and Martial up front, because Martial's probably our most informed frontline player coming off the back of last season, I'd be looking at playing Mason Greenwood on the left at the moment because Marcus Rashford hasn't been good enough. He hasn't been good enough since Project Restart. Before that, yeah, of course. How much time do we give him? Well, as far as I'm concerned, if a player hasn't been good enough, you drop them and make them earn their way back in. Make him work hard. A 3 out of 10 for Marcus Rashford today. Anthony Martial didn't get a lot of service. He had some great hold-up play at times. But, we've got to give him chances. He does rely on service. He did try and make things happen for himself as well, so I don't want to hear that excuse against him. I'm not really holding that much against Anthony Martial for this performance because I don't think he was particularly that bad. He did have one bad touch that almost got us caught on the counter-attack in the second half, I believe. But, swings and roundabouts. You can make the odd mistake. It's obviously if you're making consistent mistakes. 5 out of 10 for Anthony Martial. On to Daniel James. Look, Daniel James played on the right, and Daniel James is in a position where he really needs to impress every time he plays now, and he didn't do that. So he rightly came off at half-time because why was he playing? Why did he start in the first place? I don't care what Mason Greenwood's done for England. If that's to blame for why Mason Greenwood didn't start, then, we're ducking to social media and the media. That's not what Manchester United's been about. Remember David Beckham when the media literally had it in for him. We played him anyway. Cristiano Ronaldo, when the media wanted nothing more but to rile Cristiano Ronaldo, we played him anyway, and they succeeded because their talent comes to the fore. Daniel James doesn't have that kind of talent, of course, so I don't know why I'm bringing them up when it's coming to Daniel James, but he has nothing to offer. He can rarely beat the first man when it comes to a cross. He can't even beat his man. The only time Daniel James is useful when you can literally send him running for a ball, it will likely beat the defender for pace. And he has an average cross or an average shot, but that's it. He needs to impress every game, and he weren't good enough. Did he do that much wrong today? Not wrong, but he didn't do anything right either. So I'm going to give Daniel James a 4 out of 10. Did he deserve to come off before players that got worse rating than him? Yeah. But, he didn't do too much wrong. And I'd say it was actually worse in the second half than it was in the first half. What is Ole doing at half-time? That's what I want to know. Because this ain't the first time we've seen us come out in the second half and be worse, which, believe it or not, is the opposite to how we were under Sir Alex Ferguson, where if we were poor in the first half, we'd always come out better in the second half. Always. On to the subs. Mason Greenwood came on at half-time. He was trying to make things happen. He should have scored his header, but, you can miss those. But ultimately, he was much better than Daniel James. Like I said earlier, Fosu Mensah improved when Mason Greenwood came onto that right because Mason Greenwood's movement off the ball is just better than Dan James. He creates room for players around him. The opposing defence has to mark him a lot tighter than Daniel James, yet Mason Greenwood still finds ways to make things happen. 5 out of 10 for Mason Greenwood. Donny van der Beek, and believe it or not, my man of the match because he was literally the only good player for us today. He came on for 20 minutes, should have came on at half-time. Some really nice one-touch passing. You can see where his qualities are. You can tell that he's come from Ajax. And obviously he scored with a brilliant finish as well. So a 7 out of 10, simply because this performance and result has nothing to do with Donny van der Beek. And, he came on and did his job. So a 7 out of 10. Obviously, he weren't nothing special. He didn't change the game entirely. But, he did his job. 7 out of 10. Man of the match. Played 20 minutes. Embarrassing for the rest of the team. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, ultimately, a lot of eyes have to be on him for this performance because it once again comes down to the coaching. Look, you can get managers that aren't specifically focused on the strategic side of the game. They employ coaches that do that. For example, Sir Alex Ferguson went from Steve McLaren to Carlos Queiroz, amongst others, Mickey Phelan. The coaches come in and help with the tactics and modernise the game of the manager, and obviously the manager delegates these jobs to those coaches. What are Michael Carrick and the other coaches doing that we're actually seeing come to fruition on the football pitch? Eyes need to start to be pointed at them. If I was Ole, I'd start demanding more out of them to see the fruition of these things on the football pitch because I don't think the coaches at this club are good enough. Be ruthless, Ole. If they're not good enough, get rid of them. This McKenna has had a lot of time at this club under Jose Mourinho and we're not seeing the fruition of anything that he's doing, to be brutally honest, because we're literally relying on individual brilliance time and time again. Anyway, guys, like I said, Ole got schooled by Roy Hodgson today, which simply isn't good enough. I want to blame the board, I absolutely do, but I have to be honest with myself, and the performance on the pitch weren't good enough today. Would Jadon Sancho have made a difference? Of course he would have. Should Ole have both hands for this fight? Of course he should. He shouldn't be fighting with one hand tied behind his back, which he is, but still, the players at his disposal today were more than good enough to get the job done against Crystal Palace. If Roy Hodgson was in charge of our players, he would have done a better job than what Ole got out of our players today. Anyway, disappointing. What a terrible start to the season. I paid £10 for this match on Now TV to get Sky Sports. My mum called me an idiot. And you know what? She's right. Anyway, on to the next match. Make sure you subscribe to the channel on your way out, and please do drop a like if you think the board are letting Ole down. But Ole needs to do better with what he's got against teams of Crystal Palace's calibre. Anyway, until next time, talk soon.